Server-side rendering and React Server components both run on the server and both produce HTML for the client. So why do we need both concepts? It can be confusing at first, and it was for me. Why can't one replace the other? How do they work together? And what roles do they play? After diving into this topic, I'm here to help you understand how these two concepts complement each other rather than compete. We'll focus on using SSR and RSC in Next.js since it fully supports both strategies out of the box. Let's start with SSR. Server-side rendering refers to pre-rendering a page on the server to generate HTML. When a user requests a page, the initial render happens on the server, which creates the entire HTML structure for that page. The HTML is then sent back to the client along with JavaScript bundle. Here are a few drawbacks. SSR happens only once, when you navigate. Before anything is sent from the server, it needs to fetch data, which takes time. Additionally, if you need to fetch data based on what's returned from the server, you have to do it on the client side. Besides HTML, the server also sends the JavaScript bundle, which is responsible for hydrating the page on the client. Hydration adds JavaScript interactivity to the pre-rendered HTML, making the page fully interactive only once hydration is complete. Another thing with SSR is that every component, whether static or interactive, still gets hydrated. That's because JavaScript is produced for every single component and React needs to know how to reconnect on the client side with the server-rendered HTML. As a result, all components effectively run twice, once on the server to generate HTML and again on the client for hydration. SSR gives us fast initial page loads with pre-rendered content, but it also brings the overhead of server-side data fetching, delays interactivity until after hydration, runs components twice, and always sends JavaScript for each component. Now, let's talk about React Server components. Unlike SSR, where the whole page is rendered on the server, React Server components render specific parts of the app. The key difference is that server components only send HTML to the browser. There is no associated JavaScript for them because they don't need to be hydrated. You can directly fetch data from a database within these components, render the content on the server, and then send just the HTML. There is no need to generate any JavaScript for the client, which results in smaller JavaScript bundles and improved performance. Think of React Server components as a granular server-rendered parts that don't need any client-side JavaScript. They are perfect for fetching and displaying content that doesn't require interactivity. In Next.js, all components are server components by default. Within server components, you can't add interactivity, but when you need it, like a button with a click handler, you can mark the component with the useClient directive. This tells Next.js that the component should be server-side pre-rendered for HTML and hydrated on the client for interactivity, just like how SSR works for an entire page. By combining SSR and RSC, you get the best of both worlds. Static content that doesn't require interactivity can be rendered using React Server components on the server without generating any JavaScript. The server can render and send only specific components using RSC instead of the entire page with an SSR-only approach. Interactive components can still be server-side rendered for initial HTML, providing a fast first paint to the user, and then hydrated on the client with the useClient directive. Thanks to RSC, sensitive business logic can stay on the server and never reach to the browser. React Server components won't replace SSR entirely because almost every app has interactive parts where we can pre-render HTML but still need to hydrate on the client for interactivity. That's what SSR is for. On the other hand, most apps also have non-interactive content that doesn't need hydration. And that's where RSC shines. We couldn't achieve this before because with pure SSR, every component was always rendered on the client side too. In summary, React server components and server-side rendering serve different purposes but work well together. SSR renders the entire page on the server and sends HTML and JavaScript to the client, but hydrates every component, even non-interactive ones. RSC renders specific parts of your app on the server and sends only HTML, avoiding unnecessary hydration for static content. Together, they create a more optimized app, reducing the client-side JavaScript load and improving performance. I hope this breakdown was helpful to you. See you soon!